Hello and welcome to another Burn the Box, Sensual Sovereignty Burn the Box with the amazing Marina Nabão. So I'm going to just give a little introduction and then bring her on. A few minutes late because the class ran over. So excited to be here with Marina. Marina is a body enthusiast, passionate about the wisdom and healing power of our bodies and all the ways we're able to integrate mind, body, spirituality in a conscious and loving way so that we can thrive. Oh, her work is so amazing. As a somatic trauma healer and embodiment coach, she supports people who are trapped in the chains of past trauma and have a deep desire to reclaim their sovereign power, their inner freedom and erotic aliveness. As a mentor and teacher to sex, love, and relationship coaches, she offers ongoing support with case consultations, continued education, and sustainable business development. She's also a senior teacher at Layla Martin's Vita Coaching Certification, which is how we met. Marina grew up in Brazil and now lives in the San Francisco Bay, California area with her husband and their rescue dog, Jessie. And you can learn more at marinanabao.com or follow her on Instagram, which you'll see her here. Okay, let me get her on. Okay. I see she's here. Let's see. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Marina.
Hey, Sally. So good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Sure. Um, so I'll start by saying, giving a little my usual intro about this series and how it started, to really be able to breathe life into this idea of sensual sovereignty, embodied love, liberation, and the license to expand the expression of our true essence. And that also became, with my first guest, Cosmos, this idea of smashing boxes and burning boxes, and really just how we, how it looks when everyone, very much including yourself, like we're expanding our essence, we're showing up in bigger ways, we're expanding out of like constricted spaces and things like that. So those kind of the themes. And we can go anywhere within that, but I know you and I have been also messaging about pleasure, which is something we both are deeply just embodying and invested in and just supporting others in. And also with this space being a global conversation for women of color, like what I love talking about, you know, the nuances that we might experience as women of color in different spaces as we go on our pleasure journey. So I'm gonna stop, but I just will flow with it. But I'm just wondering what feels alive to you with this topic, because I know it's something you're passionate about as well.
Yeah, so much comes up with these different topics that in a way are interconnected, and we can actually, I think that we can weave a little bit of different things here in this conversation, right? I do find it important that BIPOC, Black women, women of color, people of color, that we find in ourselves the space to accept that although that's not what we are taught or that we don't really see everywhere, pleasure is also our birthright. Pleasure is also something that we are deeply worthy and deserving of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just that acknowledgement, just that perception
Mm-hmm.
is revolutionary in a way
Absolutely.
for bodies of color,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for me, there is no separation between reclaiming access to our bodies, reclaiming ownership of our bodies, and depending on your backgrounds, depending on your ethnicity, the step of reclaiming ownership of your own body is a huge thing, right? Depending on culture and all of that. So the process of reclaiming these pieces together with reclaiming pleasure is not disconnected from the path of liberation and revolution.
Let's
right?
just pause right there. That is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
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 Yes. It is
So,
one in the
sorry, go ahead.
just reflecting, it's all one and the same. It's like this as we take steps, it's all one and the same path. Pleasure, revolution, liberation. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, Sonali,
Yes.
for me at least, I have this view that pleasure is so intertwined with ownership of our bodies, right? If we look at the history of Black and brown bodies, our bodies were stolen from us.
Right.
So the process of saying, you know what, this is my body. You know what, my body belongs to me, not to you, not to your desires, not to your demands, not to your needs, not to your requests, but the opposite, to me, to my desires, to my needs, to my requests. And then taking the further step, you know what? I actually feel pleasure in this body. I actually enjoy this body. I actually am able to connect with my eroticism, with my aliveness, with my vitality.
Yes.
And this is for me. And because I own it, because it's mine, I will share that with people that I choose to. I will not be forced into it. I will not be, cornered into it. This is my body. This is my pleasure. My body and my pleasure belongs to me. And I do what I want to do with this. And of course, in the interconnectedness, I enjoy and allow myself to share it with others for as long as it's consensual. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Like it's still our choice. It's our choice it's our choice to keep it to ourselves to experience it. It's our choice to share it with whom, when, how, for how long, like all of that.
Yes. Yeah. So when I see Black and brown bodies navigating this beautiful path of pleasure reclamation, of body ownership, I see a change, a big, big shift in the ways that, especially I can only speak for my lived experience of a Black Brazilian woman is one of being taught in direct and very subtle ways that my body is actually for the gaze of other people, that my pleasure doesn't really matter. What really matters is the pleasure of other people and all of that. So I think that when when I noticed myself starting to walk this path, and reclaim that ownership and come back to this deep understanding that I am worthy of pleasure, I tapped into a sense of inner power that I had never experienced before in my entire life.
Yes.
So in a way, from this lived experience, I just wonder what it is like for other folks of color, for other Black bodies to navigate this.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Sonali? Am I tripping?
No, it makes perfect sense. And it brings up a few things, a lot of things actually, but one that comes up very, very readily is what I have experienced is, which I didn't, and I went through all kinds of, like I did psychiatry and I was working on this mental health field and all these things, but it really wasn't until doing this work, doing the embodiment work, claiming the pleasure, and gaining this awareness that I realized how much of my life was spent in kind of a stress response of appease, where everything became about, like, I didn't even think about my own needs, my own wants, really. I mean, when I was in a situation, I mean, no matter what it was like, what does the other person want? What do they need? Like, it was, I realize it's, there's, that goes back far, right? That goes intergenerationally. That's kind of like something that I've experienced in my own body, that I was doing without having any idea that I was doing it. But what you speak of, to finally start to claim my own wants and desires, like to start to think of that, and it's all the same process, like you're saying. It's, it did start with this work with Layla Martin, who we both know, that it started with pleasure. It started with, sensuality, sexuality, pleasure, but then it really does expand to all areas of life, where it's like, oh, this is for me to decide. What do I want? What do I desire? How do I want to feel? Who do I want to let in my space? Like, it gets to be, almost like, it can feel a little bit, well, for me, at times it can feel a little bit like, this is selfish. This is selfish. It's all about me. It can become like all about me, but it's so much more than that. It's much more about the reclaiming and something that hasn't been done. I haven't seen modeled in my family, for example, in my experience, culturally, going back to Sri Lanka, seeing like, oh, this isn't done. This isn't something that is, this is something quite revolutionary to start to think in this way.
It is. It is. And what comes up for me as I hear you is the part of selfishness, right? It's really a reframing of that, because it's really about being so connected with myself, with my inner world, with the landscape of my sensations, of my felt sense, of my needs, my desires, my wants, my impulses, my moods, all of that. And from that space, I am open to connect with someone else. So it's not about being selfish. It's about really first connecting with my inner community before I connect with the outer world. Yeah. And then that experience with the outer world, with other people, is an experience in which I am able to show up much more authentically, because I am understanding, I am feeling, I I am grounded and anchored in what is happening for me, in what needs to happen, what doesn't need to happen, and all of that, right? So the piece of it's selfish, I think it's really more a cultural conditioning that so many of us have received. And again, when it depending on your cultural background, how you grew up and all of that. Like for me, growing up in Brazil, yes, it's super selfish for a woman to put her pleasure first, right? Because it's such a patriarchal society, so
Right.
there's so much sexism that you know, I have dated mostly men, and they're very much only concerned with their pleasure first, right?
Right.
Well, not everybody, and this is a big generalization, but many of the men that I
Many.
dated were very
Yeah.
much concerned only with themselves. So it's almost like when I say, no, I don't accept this. No, what about my pleasure? Then there is the accusation of being selfish when it's not, when it's really about, you know, balancing the power dynamics there in a way.
Yeah.
And I just want to take a moment to say hi to everybody who is joining, because I've seen so many names of people that I know. So excited to have you here. For my Brazilian friends, I hope that you can understand me in Portuguese.
Oh,
Thanks for joining me. So exciting. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here. Sorry, go on.
I've been like just waving back at people, but yes, a lot of people stopping through. um, yeah, I fully hear that about it's not, I mean, even in the US, I think like it's not there's not an equality there of this is what the patriarchy is, or this is what we're conditioned into is to kind of like be in some kind of subservient, role, pleasing, doing the pleasing, but not allowing, not giving ourselves permission to receive or to focus on our own needs and desires. And I think that's what's so powerful about this work that you're
It is.
doing, that I'm doing, that we're in. It's like shifting that. And as you shift that, like you say, this is revolutionary. This is about our liberation. This is
It
about
is.
sovereignty. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. You know, Audre Lorde speaks so beautifully about it in her piece called "The Uses of Eroticism as Power." It's really so beautiful to see her as a lesbian activist, a lesbian Black activist, name that tapping into our eroticism and our pleasure is activism as well,
Mhm.
is part of the path of, again, regaining all ownership of ourselves and our bodies, right?
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense to me.
Mhm.
Even though for some people it might feel like, oh, this is just not important, we should be focusing on other topics. Well, there are so many topics that we should be focusing on, for sure. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that there is such power in coming back to our bodies and our sexuality, and embracing our pleasure and our divine eroticism, that actually empowers us and strengthens us to be more present and more available for the other challenges and tasks that we have,
Yeah.
for the other things that we have. And when it comes to bodies of color, bodies of culture, Black bodies,
Mhm.
for me, it's really actually a medicine that counterbalances all the stress, all the overwhelm, all the intensity of living as a BIPOC person in a racist world, right? With systemic racism and all of that.
Right.
So, um, it's also a way to help us stay alive and engaging with our life force energy that is so important for us to step out, to show up in the world and do the work that we need to do to create the world where we actually want to live in, and not this one that we have inherited that is so messed up.
Right. Right. It's like a, well, I always think of like a pleasure as a resource, right, for us. So it's, I mean, it's so many things. Just being in that state, as you mentioned, like that in itself is this, is an active, as a revolutionary act, is a an act of liberation, just to be in that state. And also, it's a way of, it's a resource for us. It's a way of refueling. It's a way of recharging, because there's so much of this for, you know, people that are more like, people are active in social justice, these kinds of things, like that is just a way to burn out. I mean, it's those paths like lead to burnout, and it's kind of like part of the systemic problem of it. So it's like, how do we, like, there's that whole like nap ministries, and, you know, like, we've got to rest, we've got to have pleasure, we've got to just take care of ourselves. Like, this is also equally important, you know, so that we can show up, if we're choosing to show up in that way. I mean, even if we're not, we're in this world that we're faced with all the things. Yeah. I'm curious if we shift a little bit into like actually doing, I want to say doing the work. I mean, is it work, or is it, you know, pleasure? Does that really work? But like being in the spaces, as we have been in, where we're with other people, other bodies doing this kind of work. I'm wondering, only if it feels comfortable, just to, because I can share as well about what that's like for women of color if we're in like a mixed space and doing this kind of work.
Yeah. Um, so I have many reflections around this. And of course, again, I can only speak for my lived experience, which is, you know, unique and different. But there are a few, so just giving some context for people who are watching us and might not be aware. We're both sex, love, and relationship coaches. We are both doing sexual empowerment work, mostly with women and non-binary vulva owners. We're both parts of a big program from a famous white teacher, where the teachings and the practices and the work that we do is based in sacred sexuality, the traditions of Taoism, of Tantra, and all of that. And these are white-dominated spaces, meaning most of the teachers, most of the students, most of the members in these programs are white folks. And I want to add, are white folks from the Northern Hemisphere, because I think that also is an important distinction here. And for me, what comes up, Sonali, is first, when I think about Eastern traditions, Taoism, Tantra, I think about people who look much more like you and I than they look like Angelina Jolie. Right?
Right.
So when we go back to history, when we go back to those cultures and those people who had the brilliancy of understanding how sexual energy, how sexuality is important and primordial in the path, in the spiritual path, and in reclaiming power and liberation, I see that I am exactly where I should be, because there's like These are my people, you know.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
these are the people who are really connected to the land, who are really connected to a sense of community, who in the cosmovision, in the ways that they see life and the world, it's
Mhm.
all about the interconnectedness and the interconnectedness. It's all about
Mhm.
taking care of your inner ecology and
Mhm.
tending to the outer ecology, tending
Mhm.
to communities and all of that. So for me, when I step into those spaces,
Mhm.
I'm actually just reclaiming my spot there,
Mhm.
right? So it's not so much the opposite. Yeah, it's not so much like, oh, I never question myself, oh, do I belong here? Oh, should I be here? This is a white dominated space,
Yes.
right? It's really like, oh, this is coming from people who are brown people,
Yes.
who have dark skin, right? This is coming from parts of the world that were colonized. This is coming just like my country was colonized,
Mhm.
right? This is coming um, from cultures that are very much uh, connected to my own culture,
Mhm.
right? So why would I feel foreign to this? Why would I feel like an intruder to this when I'm not? So for me, and again, this is my lived experience, I'm just taking up my space,
Yeah.
right? So that is one piece of it. And the other piece is that this, like the whole neo tantra scene, right, in the US, in Europe, that is completely white dominated and all of that, it it is a space for people who are
Mhm.
wanting to do work, right?
Yes.
And unless we step up, unless we show up, who will do that? So when I became a senior teacher at this big program, for me it was like I'm just stepping up with my knowledge, with the things that I know, with my training, with my capacity, with my magic to this role. And the fact that I'm a Black and Brazilian woman will just show other people that they can also step up to their power and to their roles in leadership. It's more like being it's more about representation for
Mhm.
other people to know that this is for us as well, than like, oh, I want to be known as the Black teacher. No, I want to be known as a teacher. I know that I'm Black. I don't need anybody to tell me that. It's obvious that I'm Black. I don't need that reassurance all the time. The same way that I don't need the reassurance that I'm Latina, first because I don't even feel very connected to the term Latina. Brazilians don't really call ourselves Latinos. We call ourselves Brazilians. So that's, you know, a terminology that people gave me,
Yeah.
and it's not the one that I claimed, which is fine. Uh, but for me, it's really like, okay, so if I don't step up, only white teachers will be doing this work. And then what happens to the students of color, to the Black students that need some sort of representation, that need to see that this is a space for them as well,
Mhm.
right? So for me, it's really more about opening doors to others and being um, in a place to normalize that
Mhm.
all bodies, all colors, all ethnicities, all nationalities can be invested in doing this beautiful work, can become international well-known leaders in this field. Yes, and we can never forget that these traditions, they come from bodies of color, from bodies of culture, not the opposite.
Mhm.
How does it feel to you?
What's that?
How does that land to
Oh,
you?
it's powerful, Marina. I'm like hearing you and feeling this, and to be honest, it's like a different, this was, I'll share my own, but this wasn't my experience. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's actually, it feels very inspiring and very empowering to hear it from you in this way, and to also know that you're in this role, because I know it's an important role. There's a lot of people looking up to you, and you are very comfortably and powerfully claiming your
Mm-hmm.
your presence as a teacher and a person of color.
Yeah.
I think for me, you know, it's an interesting question, because I know, also going back in time, in history, that like the
Mm-hmm.
Sutra, and like there was all this, you know, sexuality um, that comes from my family's originally from Sri Lanka, but from India. Like this, it goes back. But it's like I feel so much part of the colonized country. Like if I have connection is to that country, it's like this colonized um, country that my parents grew up in, and you know, this was very much suppressed, and I felt it. It's interesting because I ended up. I was here in Mexico when I said yes to do the coaching, but I ended up starting the coaching as a student, the coaching course in Sri Lanka. So I was very much like, it was this, I couldn't access this, like I'm claiming that, you know, this is coming from this culture way back, and it's coming from people of people of color. I was feeling the like, oh, I'm doing this, but I probably shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. I was definitely in a place of like being very grateful that I was able to do this work, and also feeling like such a disconnect, such a like around me, you know, because I was there at that time, living there, and it just was like, gosh, nobody. I felt like the women I was encountering, whether they were people I'm related to or not, that this isn't being claimed. This isn't, you know, this has been very much so suppressed, so repressed. So there was some power in it to be there and be doing it, you know, but I also was very quiet about it. I wasn't like announcing to anyone, hey, I'm doing this thing, to my friends and things, of course. So the whole process has been a slow process of like more coming into it. Like now I can feel it more, like this is my birthright. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I lived like 4 decades without like delving into this at all, or being aware of this at all, or claiming this for myself at all. And then being in predominantly, you know, a white space, I honestly I think it's confusing. Like there's something where it's like, well, I'm this has happened, I think, over and over with a lot of different aspects of healing and spirituality and all of that, where it's like, for example, my family's Buddhist, but I didn't learn a lot about meditation. But then there's teachers that went to India or went, you know, to the East and then brought it back. And so I'm starting to like claim things, claim what is true, what is my birthright, what's in my body, but it's coming from white teachers. Like this has been an um, ongoing pattern. This was just another area, you know, really. So I think for me, it's it just was it added other factors for me to work with, and know also, because as doing it, as we've been talking about, like it's, you start with pleasure, but you start to awaken to so much more. Like there's so much more that was coming alive in me about oppression and the um, systemic oppression, the systemic racism, all of these things, the colonization, and it was it was just more for me to kind of to work with. Maybe someone you know is here.
Yeah, Lilo. Oi, amor. Yeah. So, and that's why I said at the beginning that it was important for me to state that that's my lived experience, because I do know it varies a lot from people to people, right? But one thing that I've been considering a lot, Sonali, is that the more I step up into my leadership, into my power as a teacher, as a coach, as a healer, and all of that, there is also a part of me that really wants to um, to know, a part of me that knows deep inside that I have a lot to contribute with the people who are in this path, with the people that get to work with me either as clients or as students, right? So there's a part of me that will not be stopped, that will not allow myself to be detained from doing the work that I know that I am called to do from a very, deep, deep place within myself. I'm called to do this work. And I will not allow this to be stopped because sometimes it is uncomfortable to be in a white dominated space. For me, it's more about acknowledging that, oh, I wish there were more people looking like me here, or I wish there was more diversity, right? For me, we thrive in diversity. As human beings, nature shows us all the time that the more diverse the ecosystem, the chances of thriving are higher, and all of that. So there is a part of me that grieves the fact that there is not enough diversity in these spaces yet. And that will not stop me or prevent me from being in those spaces. For me, it's really, I know what I carry. I know what I bring to the world, and I want to be heard. I want to have my voice heard and acknowledged. And that's it, by anyone, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of where you're from, regardless, because we all have so much that we can add up, that we can deepen when we hear different perspectives, when we hear from people with different lived experiences, and we're not so much inside of bubbles of only like-minded people, right? So, yeah. And I also think that, again, for me, it's like, this is also my space. I also belong here. Yeah. These teachings are also my teachings.
Yes.
Yeah. These practices also run through my veins, are also in my DNA. Yeah. And okay, I could have received it from someone who doesn't look much like me. But the essence, the energetic imprint of the practice doesn't belong to one human being, right? The energetic imprint belongs to a lineage, and the lineage feels really close to me.
Wow. Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I always appreciated that about you. You're like this drive that I feel, this like that you embody. Really bring your power out there. Yeah, it's very powerful. It's very interesting what you were sharing, because I'm just musing about how I've kind of, and really only in the last, I'll say the last year, but it might have been, it's really maybe less than a year, of really focusing in my work to really only wanting to serve melanated beings, women of color, women of culture. And And I do appreciate like the diversity and everything about like thriving in that. And also for me, and again, this is from my experience, I suppose I'm feeling called to create some spaces where it's still diverse. It's still diverse because I'm not like working with like one particular kind of person or something, but it's kind of a space where maybe, and I say maybe because I don't know, because we're all individuals, we're all going on this journey, we all have our own lived experiences, intergenerational things, all these things, you know, but maybe there's a potential for less triggering, for like an ability to drop into a process more. And again, this is, you know, something that I'm feeling very called to at least work in now and see, you know, how that goes.
It's such powerful work, Sonali, because there is, of course, a deeper layer of a sense of safety and resonance when you create spaces for people of color, for bodies of color to explore their relationship with their eroticism and sensuality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's super, super important to have those spaces as well. You know, for me, it's both and. It's both the specialized, niched down groups and the bigger, more messy, more, right, groups as well.
Yeah.
I think it's that because yes, especially for people who are carrying a lot of unintegrated trauma and all of that, it's very hard to deal with the triggers that might be when you, as a person of color, enter a white dominated space,
Right.
to do such a vulnerable work like exploring your sexuality and sensuality, right? It's not, it's really vulnerable. It's really intense for some people. And so I find it fascinating. I remember when you first shared with me that you were focusing your work and your service,
Yes,
right, to bodies of culture and color. I had the goosebumps. I'm like, hell yes, this is so fucking needed. Yeah, there's so much medicine that comes from that. Wow. So bravo. Super excited for people who are working with you.
You know. And I'm appreciating the both and, you know, because it is like there's so much to be learned, even, I mean, really, even in what we're triggered by, if we go deeper and deeper into that, like that is a wealth of information of like, okay, what's going on here? You know, what is that about? So there's, and it's not like it's like just the race thing that's going to be triggering. There's so many things these spaces, you know, that can come up, but it is such an invitation, you know, when we have the capacity to like look at that and explore. And it happened for me to, you know, learning in the spaces that I did of being aware of like, okay, people who were taking like things like that had nothing to do with racism, but just like people taking up a lot of space, people, you know, and then I'd be like hiding, you know, noticing all my triggers, you know, which played out later because it's taken a long time to take up some space or to allow myself to be seen and these kind of things. So that was just one example, but we can learn so much from whatever space that we're in. And yeah. And it'll call to certain people, you know, to want to do it in a more niche down, as you say, you know, like in a more select group, or to just be in a bigger group and want to be in that bigger space, you know, where it's like you're one of many people all doing the same kind of thing, you know. It's like that's really powerful as well. and the coaching program keeps growing too. It's like it's big now. It's beautiful. Which is beautiful.
Yeah, I think there is healing and learnings in all the different configurations of spaces that we set ourselves up to be part of, right? For me, it's really about having a brave heart to navigate any space that we choose to navigate, right? It's holding that brave heart because yeah, I will stop there.
I will just mention that one of the teachers I'm working with now, who does a lot of decolonial work, decolonial healing. She has a decolonial alchemy space, Dr. Rocio Rosales Mesa. I'll just mention her name. But it's really been resonating a lot because she's calling her space a brave space. Because it's not to say that anything is actually safe, right? But we can show up very consciously, with much intention to be brave and to actually do the work, do the practices, or be in the space and connect with each other. And we're, just in that space of being brave and exploring, and then being present to what shows up within us,
Yeah, I love that word, brave, because part of me really thinks that life requires us a certain level of bravery so that we can navigate all challenges, including racial challenges, right? Where it does require a brave heart to keep engaging with life, to keep engaging with people, to engage with pleasure, to engage with our bodies, right? When things can be very, very intense for people. So yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm wondering if there's anything. I'm just noticing time, and sometimes I go way over on time, but I'm kind of aware of it today. But just like if there's anything, because I want to hear about your work. I really want people to, whoever watches this, maybe even the recording, to know where to find you and all those things. But I'm wondering if there's anything else that related to this topic that we haven't given voice to, or that you feel.
There is. I think it's important when we're talking about complex topics like this, like sexuality, like pleasure, like systems of oppression, racism, and, colonialism and all of that. It's very, very important to name that these issues are super nuanced. There are many, many layers to them, and that by no means we're trying to cover all the possible perspectives here, right? So by no means my approach to how I see the work that I do, to how I envision myself doing this work, is anything set in stone or anything like that. There's so much space for, questioning, for reflecting, for challenging some of the declarations, right, that we made. And I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with holding the understanding that we were talking about complex and layered things, and we can be brave enough to just allow ourselves to do so, knowing that there's no solution, there's no right or wrong, there is what it is, and how we each personally choose to navigate life, and also collectively how do we contribute to the communities that we are part of. Yeah.
Thank you.
That felt important to name. Yeah.
Yes, that's so good that's so important dimension, the nuance, and that we're just each of us sharing our perspectives, are based on our lived experience, and that varies from individual to individual, of course. And it's just something to well, I like, this is part of this whole series, is I love hearing from other women, other people of color, people of culture, to find out more about their path, their perspectives, because it's really is weaving it's weaving all these different perspectives together, and to like, look, this is a whole, this is something that's a different, it is different lived experience than being in a white body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also very unique each person.
Both and.
Both and a lot of both and a lot of space.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share more about your work, or what's lighting you up these days. I know you're involved in so many things.
Yeah. So for folks who are watching us, I work as a somatic trauma healer and embodiment coach. I mostly help women and vulva owners who are trapped in the chains of trauma to heal, recover their sense of power, inner safety, agency, erotic aliveness, so that they can really thrive in life. I see my clients one-on-one worldwide. I see them online. Some people come here to my office, which is super fun as well. I'm in the Bay Area, in Mill Valley. So if you're feeling called to do some somatic work around trauma, especially sexual trauma, that is one of my jams. I invite you to connect. Yes, just visit my website, marinanabão.com. You can also follow me here on Instagram. The link in my bio has all the information how to reach me, and let's chat. Yeah, I'm really, really proud and inspired by somatic healing and the work that I have been doing in the world with amazing clients. I have like, I'm always in awe of my clients. It's just like, wow, what a deep bow in honor, and just witnessing what is possible when people allow themselves to heal, allow themselves to end their bodies, right? Allow their body minds to show up and to do the work, so that they're not tied anymore. They're not constricted anymore by what happened in the past. So beautiful, beautiful, powerful work. So you're welcome to learn more. Yeah.
Yes, amazing work. I love that. And your practice has been full, I think, of what you last mentioned. I think so. I'm just so excited for all the people getting to work with you at one-on-one, like really make big changes.
Yeah, it's deep, right? So yeah, I'm very, very glad my practice is full, but I do have a wait list. So join my wait list. That little by little, I'm calling people. Like I wrap up with a client, I onboard a new one. I wrap up with another one, I bring another one. So the wait list works. Believe in the wait list. It works.
Love it. Oh, Marina, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing. And I really appreciate you and your work, and yeah, always inspired by, I just feel the power. I feel the power that comes from you. So,
thank you, Somatic. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's so good to be here with you. I love the work that you're doing in the world. I love the work that you're doing, inviting folks over to have these conversations. And I really hope that everybody who joined us really benefits from the discussion, from the reflection, from the different perspectives. I think that's how we grow in life, right? By expanding our visions with different perspectives. Yeah, thank you so much. This was fun.
Oh, thank you. So we'll have this recording. I'll just mention that I do have now 2 things that are brewing. I have the Pleasure Temple, that is an online program, and also planning a retreat for September. So the details of that will come really soon. So like you were saying, when people are coming to your office, it's so nice to be with people. And we've had, you know, this pandemic and all this time of like only being online. So it's nice to have that opportunity. Thank you all for joining, and Marina, and I'll share info with this when I post it.
Absolutely, thank you.